start recording now. Okay, it's Lone Warfare Wolf Territories Grid. For those of you who don't know, I own the grid. Or I kind of, when I say I own it, it just means I look after the servers and make sure everything runs, along with Busty and Dyer, who are our other techs. And but the actual grid is kind of run by the community, the Peacekeepers, and Indigo does an incredible amount, and Lunar Stormfeather does an incredible amount. So do the Peacekeepers and Illusions and everybody, and that's what's made this possible. And it's been really cool. Last night I fell asleep at a venue, and everyone had gone, and I kind of woke up and there was Lone dancing away, happy as Larry, but there was nobody there. So it's going to be a bit like that. So anyway, so I'm going to talk today about object storage, and it's a type of storage that really anyone can use. It's really useful for grid owners, and I'll explain why that is, but also actually for other projects where you need to store lots and lots of things like images, videos. YouTube use object storage to store all those videos that you watch on YouTube, and I'll explain why a bit later on in this presentation. So if you get all excited about object storage and want to talk to me about it afterwards, I've already done a video on YouTube about it, which is a bit more technical than I'm going to go into today, but it was made a long time ago. Okay, so I'm going to start. So object storage for beginners. Slide 2. Come on, Google. This all worked earlier. That's it. Right, object storage simplifies data management, scalability, and accessibility. So that sounds like a bit of computery jargon, but what it basically means is that there is an issue in OpenSim, and the issue is something called assets. And any of you who knew, OS Grid shut down for 10 weeks while they had to copy assets to a new server, and we didn't want to do that, so we were looking for a solution that allowed it to have live, we could expand the storage live so that we would never end up in that situation that OS Grid had. And we discovered object storage, we ran some tests on it, and we've used a number of providers since we started 3 years ago. But what it actually does is a bit different from a standard file system. So on a standard file system, you store files, you read them and write them, and you can read parts of a file, you can stream bits of a file, and it's much more like that. Whereas object storage, data is stored as objects rather than files or blocks. Oh, my computer's just done a virus check. Right. It allows storage of huge amounts of unstructured data, which is what assets actually are. So they are bits of, in the database that supports it, that's the index to the object storage, if you like. So if you've got a grid, you'll have a database for your grid, but your assets will be stored in a file system somewhere, and we use object storage on our servers to store it. So the object storage is not on our servers, it's in the cloud, and our servers, we've actually built our own cloud from the ground up, with some very cool technical people. So our assets, backups, map tiles, logos, anything that's written once and read a lot is stored pretty much on object storage. So it's easier to retrieve, and it's fast, and it's unstructured. And another thing about it is that it's stored across multiple servers, so your data is really resilient, because you'd have to lose like 100 servers to actually have a problem. And if a server breaks, then they can just replace it, and the object storage will rebuild the data, and you won't even notice it's gone down. So that actually does happen, and we'd never hear about it. No one will ever say that it's even happened. Okay, so it can't be used for things. It can't be used for. You can't run a database on object storage, because a database needs to be read in parts, so that it'll read parts of the database files and write to parts of the database files, and object storage doesn't allow that. It's basically a big bucket you put stuff in, okay, and you pull stuff out of. So anything that has to read and write a lot from parts of files won't work. It's like one of those old CDRWs. For those of you who are ancient like me, we used to have these disks that were write once, read write once, read many, and that's a bit of what it's like. It's not really like that, because you can actually delete and manipulate files, but let's say you had 1,000 songs in MP3s, you could store those 1,000 songs on object storage and pull them when you wanted to, and that would be a good way of storing it. Okay. When you're running a grid or any commercial application, location is incredibly important. Now, what do I mean by that? So, one of the things that we found is that um, I always thought that part of our asset store is in a different part of the asset system. Yes, that's very true. They are stored in different part of the asset system, except that your viewer will cache them. So the viewer stores data locally, and we also use something called a content delivery network, which also caches data. But in the end of the day, all your stuff like hair, clothes, knees, chairs, this tent, the little pig over there for donations, the Tech Circus sign, are all files in our object storage. So when we res something, what we're doing is we're actually, first of all, the grid will go to the database and say, um, I want to get this chair, and then the database says the chair is in this file, and the grid goes, right, that file is in this folder, and it's in a series of folders, and it's a tar file, so it'll zip off over to the object storage and pull it. It'll then decompress it live and then deliver it to your viewer. It literally all happens like that. So you can see how fast it is because actually it's doing all that. You know, when you res something like a house or whatever or anything like that, that's what it's doing. It's essentially doing a query to a database and then actually physically going to a pile of servers somewhere and saying, I need this file, and picking it up. So location is very important, and one of the reasons that we moved to Dia, with from we used to be on Contabo, but they're so unreliable, and bless them. And if you want to laugh, actually follow the Contabo Facebook page. It's hilarious because every time they post a really nice thing about, you know, tech or whatever, then somebody somewhere will start going, it's hilarious. Then you get a list of people going, my server's been down for 2 days and no one's answering my tickets, and that's pretty run for the mill. So one of the reasons we moved to Dream Hosting was Dia had direct contact with the grid, with the data centers, sorry, and now we actually have a guy in the data center. We have access to people in the data center who are managing our servers and managing our tech, and part of that is the whole object storage thing. So location is very important, and you can do what's called a ping test, where you can ping a server to see how many milliseconds it takes for the server to respond to you, and that tells us how far away it physically is. And we tend to aim for under a millisecond delivery time from the object storage into our servers, and so that means that pretty much the network for the object storage is probably in the same data center that we are, which is one of the reasons it's so quick. It hasn't always been quick. We have had issues, and I'll go through a bit of the history of the providers we've used and what drawbacks there were before with them. So choosing a provider. So there's a number of cloud-based providers. Most people do actually choose a cloud provider, but you've got to be really, really careful with them. And I'll give you an example. So we actually used Cloudflare until about a month ago, and we had some issues with Cloudflare, where this is a common problem with Cloudflare. They've got an issue with their invoicing system. So they billed us 1 month like $280, which is kind of okay, which sounds like a lot, but bear with me on this. So they billed us about $280, and although they took the money, the invoice didn't show as paid. And then the next month, the bill was twice the price, which can't be right. And I couldn't find the data to back it up. So I said to them, guys, this isn't right. And then the month after that, this month, they tried to bill us $218, but by this time we've moved all our data off of it. So there is an issue with Cloudflare's invoicing. And I think if a business has got an issue with invoicing, I'm really sorry, but I don't trust my data with them. And we have about 7.5 million assets, okay? Compared to probably things like OS Grid have probably got about 10 to 20 million, all right? But at that point, I started looking for other cloud service providers. So while you guys were all enjoying resing things and creating things, etc., we were actually migrating 7.5 million objects over to iDrive E2, and I do recommend them. iDrive, the prices, so Cloudflare were charging me about $200 a month. For iDrive, we're paying about $300, $400 a year for about 5 to 10 terabytes, and we can expand it whenever we want to. It solves the issues, and it'll go up to like 100 terabytes. So we're never going to be in the position OS Grid were, where they go, oh no, our disks are full. We now have to manually transfer all the assets from one side to the other. While we were transferring it, we made a modification to our asset code that if you resed something and it wasn't in the iDrive asset store yet, it would go fetch it from the Cloudflare one, pop it in the iDrive asset store, and then deliver it to you. Now we're completely migrated across, and this is another cool thing about these asset stores. This cloud storage is you can live migrate stuff, so you can have two asset stores, and you can have them syncing continually. Now the only trouble here is with Cloudflare and AWS and Cloudflare and AWS. If you don't see anything on the screen, please click on the screen, because you need to get the video going. It's basically a live stream of my screen. So just click on the screen. If you still don't see it, make sure the video thing is enabled. Tom did a trick. Tom, what did you do? Tom will type it in the thing where you went into preferences, and it is there. Or try refreshing the screen as well. That can work. So anyway, back to the talk. So basically, what you've got to be very careful with any kind of, there you go, and any kind of what was I saying? Right. What you've got to be careful with any kind of cloud service is that some of them charge for transfers, okay? And iDrive charge for any transfers over 3 times your how much space you've got. So in our case, we have 5 terabytes with them at the moment, and that means we can have 15 terabytes of transfer before they charge us. Cloudflare charge a fortune for transfers, but not as much as Amazon AWS. And in fact, only just recently, I was working with a company who wanted to move all their stuff into the cloud, and the quote they got from their IT service provider didn't tell them about the cost of the data transfer. And I was like, guys, it's going to cost you an absolute fortune in data transfer, and it happens a lot. You just have to Google companies who move all their stuff into the cloud and suddenly are hit with a $50,000 a month bill. And that's scary. So you need to actually if you're going to rent any cloud services for anything, you need to actually look at what's called the ingress and outgress costs, because you can end up with a surprise bill. So iDrive E2, another reason I recommend it is it's really inexpensive, but the support is brilliant. So Cloudflare support, I've got 3 tickets outstanding with them at the moment, and one was raised 3 months ago, and occasionally they write back saying we're looking at it. Well, it's not really good enough, What's going to happen if it goes down? What am I going to get, a 3-month turnaround? And you'll find as well, this is like data centers, service providers, anything in IT. It's not really about how much you pay. It's really not. It seems to be about, some of them just don't have a good support network set up. iDrive E2, it was live chat when I tested them, and it was brilliant. Amazon AWS, I don't know, never used it because I think it's too expensive. Contabo it's basically I call it the Walmart of server providers. It's great and cheap if you want to run something up to test, but I wouldn't run anything production on it because basically the nightmares you read about on their own Facebook page of people going, my server's been down for 2 days, so it's really just, okay, thank you, Indigo. So obviously it's a low-tech excuse. So service providers, we have been through the mire with them, and we've learnt the hard way about having the right people in the right place at the right time and being able to deliver on quality. We don't have the cheapest servers in the world, but they are quality. And we have actually had a couple of instances in the last 3 weeks where we had 3 servers offline and the grid was still up. That's actually been fixed. But that was a story I told yesterday. They actually had to move them from one building to another, and so we moved them one at a time and did a memory upgrade at the same time, and the grid was still online. So a lot of grids who went through what we went through would have lost everything, and they'd had to start again. Because we have everything in the right place, thanks to Busty and Dyer and the tech team just managing it. It's been brilliant. So that I've got a bit off the beaten track there, but object storage cloud providers do vary, and iDrive E2 is really good. They also do a product for doing online backups as well, if that's what you're looking to do. But to do object storage, iDrive E2 it's very inexpensive, it's really good, and it works. If you want to run your own object storage on your own servers, you can do it with something called Minio. It works very well. We actually used Minio for a while, but the problem with that is we didn't have enough servers at the time. We actually have enough servers now, but we're quite happy with iDrive E2. They're doing a great job, and so we're going to stick with them. That's not saying that we won't move to our own setup in the future, but the point is we can move without taking the grid offline, without shutting things down, because we can have two things syncing with each other. Cool. Incidentally, our grid transfers about just under 3 terabytes of data a month across the internet. There you go. That's very useful. Okay, let's have that. So how do you access object storage? So what we use is something called rclone, and rclone is a piece of software that's free, and what it allows us to do is mount a drive on the servers, and that drive allows us to read and write to the object storage. Okay, you can also use rclone to read and write to Google Drive. So that's why, when you upload ORSA to the grid, you upload it to Google Drive and then you share it with an email address. So we use rclone to actually, so the whole grid has access to that Google Drive, that shared Google Drive, and that's how we can do OR uploads really easily. So it gives you access, because everyone knows how to use Google Drive just about. Let's see, what do I got? rclone works on Windows, Linux, and Mac, so it works on everything. It's easy-ish to set up. You just have to follow the instructions, but you are going to have to be delving into the terminal. If you want to if you're running a grid, I don't know if any of you are running grids, and you want to use object storage, talk to me, because I've got the settings to do it. With iDrive E2, we know that we're not going to transfer that much data. If we transfer 3 terabytes a month, we've got a 15 terabyte allowance. If you misconfigure rclone, especially with things like AWS and Cloudflare, you can be charged a lot of money, because you're reading and writing an awful lot, like we do billions of transactions a month, reading and writing. We literally do billions. So if you imagine each of those tiny little files, so if let's say you res a box with 150 things in it, when someone opens the box, it has to pull 150 things. So you can imagine how much stuff is being created. So we use rclone. It works very well for us. And the other thing about, so the way YouTube will use cloud object storage is that they stream parts of the video to you. So if you start watching a video and then you hit stop, the object storage won't stream the whole video, so it streams it to you in chunks. Okay, and that's a really cool thing. We use that. Do we use that tech? One of my customers, called Activated Mindset, which is a company that does. I built a system for them that allows them to deliver a course, and it's very customized, and it's got a bit of AI that works out. You answer some questions. They use the same tech as Google, basically, to stream videos to their customers. So that's how YouTube do it. It's how anyone with any kind of thing that needs to be streamed, they can do it through object storage. In fact, when you go to the WolfGrid website, the logo is actually pulled from the object storage. Okay, not a lot of people know that. Does Bobby use object storage? No, I don't think Bobby does, actually. Bobby does his own thing. So the way that you access object storage is you create buckets on the object storage, and you have security, so 2 big keys, secret access key and access key ID, private keys, and that allows you to connect and link into the object storage. And then you have a thing called an endpoint, which is basically a web address, more or less, and that allows rclone to talk to the object storage itself. So basically, on our servers, there are some places we know where to get to on the operating system where we can pull up the object storage and access it like it's a drive, remembering that it's not. So we can't do, for instance, there's one thing that we can't do is when we generate map tiles, we have to generate the map tiles to a normal shared drive, and then we have a map server that actually synchronizes the map tiles with the grid, because we only have one source for the grid, because we want the viewer to read the map tiles from the object storage because it's quick. And if you think about it, you can be downloading, if you're zoomed out, you can be downloading an awful lot of map tiles, and it's something that we do. It's a bit of a trick that we have to convince Robust to talk to the map tile storage, and then another server synchronizes the map tile storage with the grid. That's why sometimes if you update your map tiles, it takes a bit longer than it would on a small grid, like one of the old grids. Fred's grid, Dream Grid, one of the Dream Grids. Dream Grid has got an issue, and that is that it creates all the backups on the same drive as the servers. And I've rescued 2 grids in the last 2 months where they had Dream Grid setups, and they went, "Where's the backups?" And they were like, "Oh, they're all local." And I was like, "Look, you can use object storage. You can just dump all these backups onto object storage. You'll be quick to pull back and sort you out, and it's very secure." Okay, tips. Make sure you know the costs of anything you do with cloud. All right, if you're not renting from Microsoft or Google or whatever, the chances are you may have egress charges, so you may have charges for the amount of data that you're pulling up and down. Make sure it's the right application. So some applications will work really well with object storage. As a general rule, I just go, what do I need to do with these files? If I need to just dump the file somewhere and then deliver it a lot of times, like assets. So for instance, the region owners pack, how many people have picked that up? So you've been basically picking up, when you res it, that comes out of the object storage every single time. Bang, 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 bang. So I've got one write once, read a lot of times. And it's a good idea as well to back up to another provider. It's not as essential as if you're using standard storage, because the and also you've got to be careful if you're doing that, because you may incur a lot of transfer charges if you're transferring 8 terabytes of data. So it's not that essential because you are running on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of servers. So the chances of it all going down are very, 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 very tiny. And there's whatever systems you're running, there's always a chance something will go down, and you can only mitigate it to a certain level. So like we have now 5 database servers. Okay, that means 4 of them can go down and we'll still have the grid. All right. Every time we add another server, when we get to an odd number, because you can't, database servers are like Ghostbusters crossing the streams. You can't cross the streams, so you have to have an odd number for the database for the cluster to stay in sync with itself. So that's something we do, but it means that we have negated issues with the database servers. One of the database server nodes is used for backups, so that's not actually part of the cluster that the grid uses, and other applications that my company uses. Phew, this is a lot. Okay, so object storage is a really cool thing. If it's of interest to anybody, I was thinking we actually have a Nextcloud installation. Anyone who's interested in we use it quite a lot to manage manage work and manage software and things like that. And we use object storage to store our stuff, because with Nextcloud, it's things like documents, images, and so we dump all that stuff on our object storage. Well, it's kind of good. OpenSimSocial.com, any of you that use that, that's all stored on the object storage. So that means that when you upload a video, we don't store it on our servers. There's no point. We don't know how much stuff is going to be uploaded. It just gets thrown straight onto the object storage and gets read really quickly off of there. Saves our servers doing the work. So our servers are left to actually do the processing and things that they need to do. Whew. That's a lot. Sorry, I've been wittering. It's an autistic thing. So websites to look at: wolfsoftwaresystems.co.uk actually own the grid. That's my company that I own. It involves me alone. So and so if you need software development done, if you want to talk about object storage from a professional, delivery type of thing. We've kind of been doing it for a few years, so we deliver very complex web-based applications and all kinds of other things. And of course, wolf-grid.com, which is it. So I've been talking for 25 minutes without stopping about object storage. Has anyone got any questions? Awkward silence. Ooh, thank you very much for the applause. Do appreciate it. Okay. And thanks to Tom for letting me use your speech to text. Okay, I'm going to... Aha, I can hear typing. Yeah. Yeah, I hope it's useful. If you go to parties and things, start getting excited about object storage. Or hyper-converged infrastructures, that keeps them busy. Thanks, Indigo. Great work. Thank you for all your help this weekend. Okay. Yeah. Oh, and Rails on. You are on soon. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. If you've got any questions, ask Tom. Thanks very much. If you want tech support, please ask the grid. We'll get on with it. Right, I'm gonna stop the recording now. This will be uploaded to